The big thing for me, and I talked about this probably in every interview, was that I'm a big visual learner. So if I'm managing physical assets somewhere, I need to go and see those physical assets. If I'm talking about the financial performance or how our renewal initiatives are going, I want to have a vision of that in my mind and kind of know that I've been there firsthand and can speak well to it.
My guest today is Brandon Hammond, Director of Community Asset Management at Invitation Homes. Brings more than 2 decades of experience across single-family rentals, multifamilies, and brokerage.
The result I'm most proud of is that we got employee turnover down below 7% on an annual basis.
Wow.
I will always say, you got to take care of your people, and if you are taking care of your people will take care of your residents.
One leadership habit you rely on.
That's authenticity. And one of the lessons that I probably learned a little hard across my career is being inauthentic. It's not a recipe for success. It's like heavy suit that you have to put on every single day when you get to work.
Welcome back to Inside the Vendor Network, where we bring you real conversations with the operators and leaders shaping how the SFR and BTR industry works on the ground. If you're here, welcome. And if you've been listening for a while, thank you for being a part of this community. Before we jump in, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribing helps us grow this platform and continue elevating the voices shaping the future of housing. Today's episode is about perspective, specifically what happens when a seasoned operator steps into a new leadership role. What do they evaluate first? What matters the most? And how do experienced leaders think about assets, teams, and partners early on? My guest today is Brandon Hammond, Director of Community Asset Management at Invitation Homes. Brandon brings more than 2 decades of experience across single-family rentals, multifamily, student housing, development, and brokerage, including leading large-scale renovation programs and holding senior P&L responsibility across multiple portfolios. Brandon joined Invitation Homes just a couple of months ago, which makes this a timely and important conversation. Before we dive in, a quick thank you to our sponsor, Palisade Wall Panel and Shower Systems, trusted across SFR and BTR portfolios for faster installs, cleaner turns, and long-term durability. Palisade helps operators protect NOI while improving the resident experience, and we're proud to partner with solutions built to perform. Brandon, welcome to the show. I'm really glad you're here. Let's get inside the vendor network. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Palisade for sponsoring the episode today as well. I'm excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. So before we talk Invitation Homes and portfolio performance, I always like the audience to really meet the person behind the leadership, right? And the podcast, because you're a people. We're ultimately in a people business. So before we talk about your role today, let us get into a little bit about you, where you're from, where you live, what life looks like outside of work.
Yeah. So I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina, just a few hours east of you, over in the eastern part of North Carolina. For those that aren't familiar, that are watching and listening, it's a little bit more than an hour south of Raleigh and about 2.5, 3 hours east of Charlotte. And my wife and I have been here for 10 years. My wife was born and raised here in Fayetteville. We have 2 daughters, so we moved back here 10 years ago and wanted to be near a lot of my wife's family and you know, close to the beach and close to the mountains still, as everybody always says about North Carolina. I grew up on the western part of the state, actually closer to Charlotte in a place called Hickory, North Carolina. Went to NC State as a after I graduated high school, and have kind of been in around Raleigh, Fayetteville, and that kind of thing throughout most of my career since. And outside of work, and family, I enjoy being a free Uber driver for my daughters and all of their activities. Along with my wife, we tag team it pretty well. I love to play tennis. Our family is very involved in our church here locally. And that's pretty much it. That's life.
Yeah, that's a pretty packed calendar when you've got kids that age group, but love every moment of those years. My 21-year-old is literally taking flight. He's working on being a pilot right now. So
Oh, that's so
um,
cool.
yeah, so he's still at home with me, and I cherish every minute of it because I know before it's over, he's going to be up and gone, and like I said, literally taking flight. So you have earned your perspective over 2 decades. And I want the listeners to understand the path that has shaped your experience. And you've worked in property management and real estate since 2001. When you look back at what early experiences shaped how you lead today, what do you think those are?
Yeah, so I mean, my path into the property management field and through the property management field, I think is pretty reflective of a lot of the stories that you hear. I mean, I started out as a resident assistant and a leasing agent while I was at NC State, and so we were leasing. It was a dorm, but we were still leasing those dorm rooms when I was there, and then the company that managed that dorm had an opening at another facility in Chapel Hill and offered me my first full time job out of college, and um, and it was the most exciting position that had the best pay that I could get coming out of college. So I ended up with that, um, and then I bounced around a little bit. I got my real estate license. I went on to be a broker for a couple of years. Figured out that selling real estate was not as easy as HGTV made it look.
Sure.
So I got back into property management when an old manager gave me a call and said, "Hey, I've got this kind of troubled property down in South Carolina. I need somebody to go and turn it around over the next few months." And he was working with a vertically integrated kind of regional builder, developer, owner manager of apartment communities. Our company had 14 apartment communities throughout the Southeast, and I stuck with that company for a while. It was a small, closely held family run organization. Yeah, and I did that journey of property manager to regional manager to VP, and ended up getting my not only had my real estate license with them, but ended up getting my general contractor's license and running his development company there for a while too. And
Wow.
it was the type of role I was with them for 8 years, and it was the type of role where I got to touch everything because it was such a small organization. Our corporate office was literally 5 people. And so you really, you are an asset manager and a regional manager, and you're in running development and marketing and leasing and
Janitor.
absolutely all of those things.
I mean, get it done job for
Yeah,
sure.
when I visited properties, I mean, I went to the maintenance shop and picked up the poop bucket and the picker too. Just to keep the place clean. You do a little bit of everything, and it was invaluable because I got to learn all of those facets and do it in depth. And if I had stuck with kind of a large REIT and taken that same path, I feel that my skill set would have still been so much more narrow, or it would have taken me a lot longer in my career to learn all of those different facets of what makes this business tick. And yeah, and then I took a couple of years where I didn't really want to travel, so I ran a small real estate brokerage here in Fayetteville, North Carolina that happened to have 700 houses under management that I managed, 700 houses with 600 owner clients.
Wow.
And so ran that for a few years and got my first taste of single family rentals and rental housing and not apartment living or student apartments.
And
And
that was like,
that was 2016 to 2018. Yeah. And I was brokering, doing real estate brokerage on the side of that as well. So and then kind of the same way that I had gotten with that previous company, I had an old contact from the student housing days call me and say, hey, my investment group is going to take management in house on a portfolio. We'd love for you to come and do that. This was a guy that had tried to buy one of my apartment communities when I was with the other company, and so I went on. I did a contract for them for a couple of months and kind of worked with them to really build like a small management platform to handle 8 student housing communities. And it kind of reignited my love for the scale of the apartment business, multifamily, institutional, student housing and the like. And from there, I ended up going in with what was then Pinnacle Campus Living, became Be Home Student Living
Yeah.
as part of BH Management, and I'll say kind of got back into institutional property management. Um, and then
This industry has a way of sucking you in.
it absolutely does. Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. And it's like it's like that movie line, like, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. And
That's right.
yeah, and then yeah, yeah, and then in 2021, I had kind of a really off the wall opportunity for me. It was with Progress Residential, getting into the SFR side. And
Great.
I interviewed with them for an operations position, and that position didn't end up working out. But they came back to me and said, hey, we've got this role on our renovation team, and we'd like for you to take a look at it. And I looked at it, and I came back to them. I'm like, are you sure? Like, this does not seem like my thing. I'm pretty much kind of a purely ops guy and financial guy. And they're like, no, we really want a change manager. We're gonna make a lot of big structural changes in kind of how our renovations and turns work, and we need somebody to run really the whole administrative back into that. And so I took the chance and got into the big time SFR space, I'll say. I mean, and
Oh, so what was the big changes in that time period? Because I think a lot of the institutionals, I suspect I know, but leading you here a little bit, what were some of those big changes that your operational size could apply right there? What did they see that you didn't see?
So this was at the point in time where that company was starting to centralize management of their renovation team, and then they had an eye toward, we're going to build a centrally managed, repeatable process that can basically turn renovations into an assembly line. And then we're also going to give that organization our turns once that they've already built a well-oiled machine. And for me at that time, I mean, it was 2021. We'd just come out of COVID. I had gone through a rebranding and kind of a corporate restructure with our, I'll call it, division of student housing, going from Pinnacle to BH, and all the things that went along with COVID, obviously. So I was kind of looking for a change in what I wanted to do, kind of a new challenge. They were looking for a change manager, and having just gone through, hey, you lead 9,000 beds of student housing in 13, 14 properties all around the U.S. And you've led them through all of this while COVID was happening. We think that you might have the skill set to lead change in our organization as well. And it was really interesting because it was kind of my first, I won't say my first, it was the most concentrated job around process and people that I've really ever had. And I didn't have a ton of financial responsibility at Progress Residential in their construction side.
So, Brandon, you're now 2 months into a new seat, and the first 90 days really of your new role. I know I followed you, and you've got quite a few followers. I think you're approaching 8,000 followers on LinkedIn these days. And so I think that one thing that I quickly learned and like about you, by the way, is your vulnerability. And I think that's a big trait of a leader. But let's face it, there's a lot of people out of work, and you were out of work there for a while, and that was hard, and that was a struggle. And we were just talking about how you had a role where you were developing resources for your teams, or helping them identify resources, and really getting in the nitty gritty of, like, I hand you this, you hand me this, and like the nitty gritty of process. You did that very naturally in your job search efforts. You were putting out like a weekly email about, like, hey, here's all the jobs, and here's some different resources. I think that comes very natural to you, actually. You see?
Yeah, it was, so I was, for context, for anybody listening that hasn't followed on LinkedIn. So I was out of, I'll call it, full-time or permanent employment.
Yeah.
For a little over a year. I was laid off from my role at Progress Residential kind of late last fall. went in and actually moved over to the vendor side of the business and did some business development for 6 months, and then did a little bit of consulting over the summer while I was still looking for a new full-time role. And in that time, especially early this year, our industry saw a few layoffs, either between multifamily and single family. It was obviously a situation that really hit home for me because I had just experienced it a couple of months before. And I wanted to put something out there that that I would have really appreciated immediately after my own layoff. And yeah, and then that ended up kind of, you look at LinkedIn metrics and you look sometimes, and I was like, holy cow, like this really resonated with people. So it's something that I got out and I did weekly. And it was really kind of all about trying to foster real person to person connections across that platform. Because there's so much spam or so much bot traffic or that kind of things, especially if you have an open to work label on your profile. That I was like, if anybody can connect in the comments, or if anybody finds a role that I post because I've seen it posted somewhere else and asks me for a warm intro to one of my connections or things like that, if I can do that and help one person find a role with fairly minimal effort, it does not take me long to kind of go through and search and see like who's hiring this week that I've seen, and list all those things. Then it absolutely would be worth it. And the feedback that I got from that, the connections that I made from some of that, I mean, I've actually grown some really cool friendships completely remotely, just out of those efforts. I can't tell you the number of kind of like, let's just have a coffee chat about our shared job searching experience, or kind of support each other and that kind of thing, that have ended up growing into genuine friendships over the course of the last year. So it's been really cool. And I've actually, I know that I've been hibernating a little bit on LinkedIn since I started with Invitation, as I kind of put head down and learn the new company. But as we turn the calendar into 2026, I plan to get back to doing those weekly posts and a lot more, and kind of sharing about my journey. And but the authenticity piece is just, we live in such a superficial world. We live in a world where most of social media is like a highlight reel of people's highlight reels of their own life. And I just wanted something a little bit different. And it seems to have resonated with a pretty good crowd. And I've gotten more out of it than I've probably given anyone.
Well, and you've landed with a pretty good crowd. I love the entire team over at Invitation Homes. My background at Preferred Floor and Tile, they were one of our largest clients. So had the blessing of working with many regional VPs, local VP of operations, the field supervisors, pretty much almost every single role from a flooring vendor standpoint. Sometimes we're working with national procurement. Sometimes we're in the street, in the homes, actually working on the rehab, turn, and the maintenance side. So those are all three different phases that the asset goes through. So you end up, and those are three different wheelhouses of teams. So met a ton of people over at IH, and you have landed with an amazing organization. And it is a head down culture and stay focused. And it's why they're one of the biggest and the baddest out there in the space. They operate very, very well, because I believe they attract talent and people who can dig in and keep their head down. So you joined IH, or Invitation Homes, just a couple months ago. And when you step into a role like this, when you are what are some of the first things that you focus on going into a new career? I think this conversation is really relevant. That's how I was looking forward to this interview with you, is like, so many people were impacted by some of these layoffs. And I know a lot of them are re-entering the workforce, and your experience with also taking roles that maybe you didn't think were aligned with you back in the day when you took that role with Progress. But now fresh eyes, reveal patterns. And I want I want the audience to capture what that looks like for you. And, so what have been some of the first things you've done stepping into a new role with a very large, very successful organization like IH.
Yeah, yeah, and everything that you say about the IH team, I can say from the inside in the first not quite 60 days is absolutely true. It's been I actually sent somebody a note the other day that it's been like my best first 45, 50 days of a new job that really or a new company that I've really ever had. It's they're not only kind of head down and um everybody pulling in the same direction, but they are very welcoming and very supportive, and every team that I've interacted with. The cool thing about my role too within Invitation and being on the asset management side is that I get to interact with each one of those teams. Our team is kind of the hub that all of those teams kind of work around and through. And so given that, and kind of given that that's the nature of the role on the asset management side, the first thing that I really started to try to figure out and ask questions about is kind of how IH runs from the inside, right? Like what's the secret sauce that makes where the result is a great home for a resident. But there's so many pieces to that puzzle that lead up to that big picture. And I knew that I would need to kind of to work within each one of those teams or work with each one of those teams and that kind of thing. So my big thing is, like, let's start figuring out how the machine really runs.
Sure.
And if you need to get X result, what is the lever that you pull to kind of start getting there? And I'm still actually pretty early in that, but just understanding kind of the purpose of each team, what their mission is, what their goals are, who the people are that are trying to achieve those things, how they're incentivized, so that we can align those incentives with one another to make sure that that we're really creating kind of win solutions for everybody involved, with the team members and the company, and obviously the residents first and foremost, and our vendor partners and the like. And so that for me has been the big thing. The other big thing for me, and I talked about this multiple times, I would say probably in every interview leading up to receiving the offer, was that I'm a big visual learner. And so if I'm managing physical assets somewhere, I need to go and see those physical assets.
Yeah.
So I have 38, 39 communities in Florida, and my goal has been to get to as many of those communities in my first 90 days as possible. I've got 2 trips planned for January, which I think when they are over, I will have seen 32 or 33 of my 38, 39 communities. So I will have been pretty close to accomplishing that. But I really want to, if I'm talking about the financial performance or how our renewal initiatives are going, or what's the market, how are we positioning a property from a community from a marketing and leasing aspect, I want to have a vision of that in my mind, and kind of know that I've been there firsthand and can speak well to it. I've met with the teams in the markets that are working on those properties and leasing those communities for us, and so that's been a huge piece too.
Tampa is an amazing leader down there. I love working with him and his team on the field side of things, and Justin Goslin is
that market. They are amazing partners, and it starts with him. It really does. Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think your point is just that, in my last job, we used to spend the first 3 days talking about culture alone. We talked about what success looks like. And it was funny because for the first time ever, someone in the flooring business would come work at a flooring company, and we wouldn't talk about flooring for at least the first 3 days. And flooring people like geek out on flooring. So they want to talk about engineered hardwood and LVP and carpet and thread counts and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, we're going to talk about what does success look like around how we make agreements with one another, or, how, what is our success principles, and really carving out some time. And I know that I emulated a lot. I was mentored by Amanda Blackman out of the Charlotte market, and Bobby Mongan. And watching them lead their teams at Invitation Homes was amazing. And I basically stole some of their best practices and applied them to what we were doing as a vendor, which really aligned the teams when we worked together. Speaking the same language, right? Like, so you worked at Progress and you've worked in multifamily. The language is different, right? As some more multifamily people are coming into this SFR BTR world, I've heard different words that people have used, and I'm like, what does that mean? And it's like, oh yeah, so on this side we call that this. Sometimes just vocabulary alone takes some time, right? And from a regional standpoint, Florida from North Carolina, we definitely say some things different.
Yeah, and I mean, even frankly, between invitation and progress, I mean, they each have their own acronyms, and I mean, there are a couple of KPIs that are the exact same KPI. We just call them completely different things, and so it has been a new vocabulary to learn. But you mentioned at the top of the call, I mean, that we're in a people business,
ER.
and that for me, whether it's the single family sector or the multifamily sector or student housing or being on the vendor side, I mean, we're all managing people's homes, which is, I say this all the time. It's not just where they live. I mean, it's where they raise their kids. It's where they work if they're working from home. It's where they cook their meals. It's where they read books. It's where they raise their pets. And we're no matter what, we always have to create a people outcome, um, and I don't think we'll ever really get there without having people that are creating that outcome too. We're going to automate some steps. We're going to centralize some teams. We're going to, we're going to use AI as the years progress to make better people oriented outcomes. Um, but that's where I think, I love what you just said about, taking some ideas to use at a vendor, that originated at an operator, and really then kind of aligning those mindsets, because the more we can realize that this is not an adversarial relationship, that this is a real partnership for us to create a home for someone, not a house for someone, not a unit for someone. They're not a tenant; they're a resident inside of a home.
Oh, that was some of the serious, it's not a neighbor, it's not a complex or a neighborhood, it's a community. Um, I flinch now when someone says tenant. I'm like, ooh, like, yo, it's a resident. And I just had Ben Turner on. We recorded last week, and so the audience, Ben Turner with Roots is going to be coming on, and he's challenging other owner operators to say, what does resident experience really look like? And a lot of people throw resident experience around. That word's been used in every panel come last year, right? Everyone uses the term. But there are operators that are really taking it serious, and you can point to the result. And your background in turns and renovations gives you a field truth lens that most leaders don't have. Like when we were in the field, in the flooring space, the supervisors and the supers and in the field, the guys actually overseeing the renovations being completed, sometimes would vent across all owner operators, not isolated to any one of them either, is like, we got it. We need top leadership coming into the field. And we would see job joy and culture actually working with those organizations when you had leaders really walking in the field. Quinn Residences. I know Colleen spends, their COO spends a tremendous amount of time in the field, walking the jobs. I think Richard actually tries to keep her out of the field some, because she really knows. And she's a past Invitation Homes. I did an interview with her in season 1, and she talks about being taught that at IH and the importance of being in the field. So your truth lens, most leaders don't have that. It seems to be something that's taught taught at IH. And so when you said, hey, I want to get in the field, it sounds like they've supported your vision on that and are giving you the bandwidth to do the things that you know you need to do as a leader because of that that dual dynamic you have in your lens.
Yeah. And it's, and you take all of those lessons that you learn too, and you really start looking at like creating long-term asset value. Right. And, you can go and you can, if you've got, we'll call it a turn, right? If you've got 3 levers that you can pull in a turn, speed, cost, quality, which are I think what most companies are going to measure as like their 3 key metrics in a turn. You can't push down on all 3 of those at the same time. You can push down on 2 of them. One of them is going to pop up, right? Quality is gonna get really poor. Maybe one's gonna go down if depending on what you do. But yes, quality is gonna get really poor if you really pull hard on the cost and speed lever.
Yeah.
And then likewise, if you put more money in it, quality is gonna go up, but it's gonna take more time to complete that project. And really kind of understanding that in the short term, I think is where so many field teams are. I won't say are focused. I'll say have been focused. I think what I'm really loving about the industry right now, and in certain companies and in certain pockets of it, is that folks are no longer focusing on like, well, how can we get the best mix out of certainly cost and speed, because they're starting to see data that's being put together on how does quality for the turn affect renewal rates, and then they're starting to realize how much long-term value you can create from not just an individual home, but definitely a portfolio of homes.
Sure.
As you boost renewal rates, and you are incurring fewer and fewer turns over the life cycle of a home. There's a lot of there's a lot of, and especially in 2025, not many companies saw a lot of new lease rent growth, but they did see renewal lease rent growth. So not only are you seeing better rent growth on the renewal, but you're not spending $3,000 to turn the home.
Correct.
And so you end up realizing those gains. And there's a lot of great data that's actually starting to be pulled out there. I don't know if you've ever had like Ray Hespin on.
We're working on Ray right now.
Good. Yeah.
With Reshma Block. I'll plug this a little bit. We're in talks about a inside the vendor network. One of the areas that I've been talking with potential vendors as guests is tech. And tech is like this big mammoth thing.
Yeah.
And there's no one I know wiser in tech than Reshma Block, the former chief technology officer at Tricon Residential. So she and I've been brainstorming some ideas around tech and how do we bring those conversations to the vendor network. So stay tuned because we are working. We've at the beginning stages of a combo with Ray and some other really sharp individuals.
He's started to put together some really concrete data on renewal outcomes as they tie not just to turn quality, but to the maintenance experience from a resident standpoint as well. Guys like Gamer Salazar at IRCX, I mean, he talks about this all the time. He started to pull together some great data as well on this stuff. And as more and more folks start speaking of resident experiences, more and more folks start looking at the entire resident journey, and not just looking at it and talking about it and using resident experience as a buzzword, but realizing how the individual steps end up kind of tying to later steps.
Mm-hmm.
You're moving consultation, not just turn quality, but you're moving consultation. How does that tie to your renewal experience and overall resident satisfaction? A topic that I was talking about today with some of my team here at IH is, how do we start building a resident referral program potentially? And so then it ends up not being just that single resident experience that you're affecting, but you can start bringing in more residents in a more concrete way. And so, really kind of making, I won't say that we're pivoting as an industry, but I will say we're kind of turning a curve as an industry
I agree
on looking much more holistically at what we do, and much less kind of episodically at what we're doing. And it's super exciting to just to be a part of it and to be a part of those conversations and drive some of those conversations forward and in a small way. Um, and you are right. I mean, IH is they are allowing me a little bit of the freedom. My team is allowing me a little bit of the freedom to kind of explore some of these concepts, and an asset management role again, kind of being in the center of all of it is a perfect way to do it and start.
Innovation, innovation and new ways to think about our business. It requires some freedom and some autonomy to be able to think outside the box. And you brought up Guillermo, great friend of mine. He was actually also on season 1 with Iris CX. We love our friends over there. If you haven't checked out why you need to know before you go, definitely hit us up in the comments. We'll connect you with Guillermo. But one of the really things that he and I have this ongoing conversation around. So his background is in asset management, period. So if you look at any asset in the trains, planes, automobiles, right? Buildings, any sort of asset. He encouraged, we were talking about, oh, what trade shows are we going to go to? What are we going to do in 2026 as we need ideas. And one of the things I always love that he always reminds me of is like, hey, this has been being done for a long time. There's been people managing assets for hundreds of years. And so looking at other industries and how they've solved things like such as a referral program, studying how other asset managers, whether it's, the military and moving weaponry, whether it's trains who are moving cargo up and down our railroad tracks across our country. How are they handling some of the logistics? And that's what Iris CX really was, is he applied a concept and a technology that was being used in other areas to manage assets. And then he simply applied it here, and voila, you have a triage software and can interrupt less interruptions for the resident. And then the technician is better equipped when they show up. So not only does the resident have good experience, Brandon, but what about job joy for the maintenance technician? What about culture that drives within an organization because someone isn't having to get up every day, do a job and like bang their head against the wall and be like, why can't we fix this? Why can't we just show up with all these parts? And I think build to rent, that's where your focus has been. But I think you're right about turning this corner. We're finally getting some data. Sure, we're still in the early innings of this industry, but we're starting to get a little bit smarter about what we're doing, and it can become dangerous. And you've led large-scale renovations and turn programs, tens of thousands of projects. I just want to point that out to the audience. You're not a rookie here. Tens of thousands of projects annually when you were at Progress Residential during one of the biggest, what I call land grabs of all time with Scattered Lot. How does that experience shape your thinking as you're visiting these properties and you're looking at the aftermath of a whirlwind that we all went through over the last decade? I mean, let's face it, I was in the flooring industry. You were doing some renovations as well. In some parts of that, it was craziness. And sometimes it was just like, get it done, get it done, get it done. We had hard deadlines to hit. We were looking at ways, but very we're working on the business, right? A majority of our 80-20 rule there was 80% where we were in the business. We weren't scaling at preferred floor and tile. We were trying to keep up for a handful of years. Like, how do we scale and like get enough people to install enough LVP fast enough and carpet fast enough and all the things. So
You're giving me flashbacks to my first spring at Progress was the great appliance shortage of 2022. And I hadn't, I mean, my job was not out in the field. My job was at the desk for all of these projects and the administrative side. I even had a special corporate credit card at that time of, if you know someone that has refrigerators, buy them and we will get them to a house somewhere. So what?
and then it was like, what do you mean you're off spec? It was like, it didn't matter. Like, it was like spec.
And it was a really, that was a really, it's this really specific episode within kind of that whole time, like as you said, Jay. Big institutional SFR companies are growing like gangbusters. A ton of money is going into apartment development and construction as well. In that time, right after coming right out of COVID, there were just stressors on the system. Yeah, across operators, across vendors, across developers, across tech platforms, suppliers. Yeah. Yeah. So it was such an interesting time, but
It was fine.
it's
Back on it. Some days it was not always so fun. But in your experience, what breaks first when portfolios scale too fast? What was your experience with
so. I mean, honestly, it's the people. I mean, if I think, and I would, if I'm ranking the things that break, I mean, people is so far and above number one, because you just mentioned kind of looking at not just the resident experience but looking at the entire experience of like a maintenance request or return, right? Making sure that the vendors have a good experience, making sure that the folks inside of a market office along with the folks out in the field have a good experience, making sure the resident, right, making sure that everybody that has a part of that has a great experience. And in those times where companies are going 1,000 miles per hour with people that can only go 500 sometimes, or processes that can only go 250 sometimes.
right?
The critical piece in that breaks is the people, and they're gonna break the fastest because there's just all this stress, and that stress kind of results in negativity in everyday interactions that that should be routine and really are. I won't say insignificant, but really should be kind of menial to the process, right? And
Organic.
yeah, but everybody is so stressed in it. Vendors, teammates, residents, everybody that's the part that breaks, and you end up seeing really high employee turnover. I mean, the team that I took over at Progress had well over 20% annual turnover whenever I took them over, and a lot of it was just kind of this go culture, and not taking a step back and slowing down a little bit. And I mentioned processes, really kind of looking at the processes and saying, hey, is every step necessary? Are there things in this that we can automate? Are there things in this we can just completely get rid of that are now just total busy work? So you start doing that, and you ask questions and kind of say, what are the hardest parts of your job? What are the unnecessarily hardest parts of your job? What are the things that you really enjoy doing? I had a team of, at one point, 220 people at Progress across 2 continents, because we had some in India, and we really bought into things like specialization for them, and kind of assessed each team member's skill sets and their likes and their interests, and said, look, instead of making you do 75 things a day, nobody one can be great at 75 different tasks or job responsibilities anyway.
That's right.
Let's figure out the things that you're good at, that you're well above average at, that you're great at, that you like doing. If that's 7 of those tasks, well, I'm going to try to give you as many of those 7 things as I possibly can, and I'm going to find somebody else that's great at the rest of it to do those things. So we really started building kind of some specialized teams. And it was change management 101, sometimes 201, and sometimes 301. I mean, like we hit some roadblocks. We hit a lot of speed bumps. We hit a lot of speed bumps with the teams that we supported. We hit a lot of speed bumps with some of our operating partners and cross-functional teams within the organization. But we overcame a lot of those speed bumps, if not all of them. The end result was better turns, better renovations, certainly greater capacity at doing those things.
Learning.
Yeah. But the result I'm most proud of is that we got employee turnover down below 7%.
Wow.
On an annual basis.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah. And so, I will always say, you got to take care of your people. And if you are taking care of your people will take care of your residents. I didn't originate that concept. I just bought way into it. So whatever. I
think sometimes, even as leaders, we don't always show up the best version of ourselves, and we're not always the best leaders. And now looking back, as the I started out at Preferred Floor and Tile. We had 5 employees as well. So I can relate to wearing multiple hats and that. And sub 1 million, and grew that company to an 8-figure business, national brand. And we were a local little mom and pop. There's a lot of growing pains that the leaders go through, right? And sometimes there's no up to go, hot air to go up, right? And so sometimes hot air goes down in smaller organizations, and you learn together. And I think you experience things together, and that's where you all grow. And that's where I think vulnerable leaders can share down in a way that inspires others to say, you know what, I can help. There's people on your team when you develop good relationships as a leader with your team, and you're vulnerable enough to say, I don't have all the answers. That's when you get people in your team raising their hand and be like, I want to try. I want to help. And that's where you see people grow. And I think that's one of the biggest rewards I've experienced, growing a small little mom and pop into a national brand. But a lot of vendors listen to this show, but this isn't, and this show isn't about pitching product, but what we're doing is we're talking about what does the owner operators want from us as vendors if we're listening. What can I do? What can I take from what Brandon says today and go apply back as a vendor in my organization? It's about what great partnerships look like. And, through some hard times, some good times, some celebrating. When you're new in a role and you're approaching existing vendor relationships, this is a tricky question. One of the scariest things for a vendor sometimes is when a new person comes in and you're like, oh man, there goes my relationship. What's that going to do to my work? How's that going to impact things? Let's talk about that a little bit from a operator standpoint, because no good operators just here and come in and like wipe out their vendor base. What are what's your approach to existing vendor relationships and operational partners as you come in? Because I know that's something that I personally feared sometimes when you had change management and those things happening.
So, I won't say that I've been this way for 20 years of my career, right? I mean, I've iterated constantly, um, but I think one of the things that I don't expect changing much about me for the next 20 years of my career is I've really bought into transparency as one of the core principles that I think we should all live by, especially in businesses like property management, where and in relationships like operator vendor relationships. And property management is one of those weird businesses where your client isn't necessarily your customer or your user, right? Your clients are asset owners as a property manager, but your customers and your users are a resident inside of a home. And so that puts you in a really unique position. And I think that if you, as an operator, if you recognize that you're already in that unique position, I think that you can empathize with a vendor a lot more because they're in a very unique position, and that you're sending them into a resident's home to do work for you. And so kind of their client is you, but you are sending them into the home of somebody that is interacting with, and that is not necessarily the one that's paying them. So everybody kind of having that shared understanding that we're all in kind of in a unique position in the business world. It's not as clear cut as a lot of other industries are. When everybody kind of realizes that there's that complexity to their role already, I think having a lot of transparency about what are the clear expectations on what this individual job is, but what this relationship should be, and what success looks like in our operator and vendor relationship. So that's got to span all levels, right? That's at the 30,000 foot view strategically, like how do we want our long-term relationship to work, but how does that manifest itself in each individual job along the way?
Sure.
And each individual assignment along the way.
Friction.
Yeah.
I think good partnerships reduce friction. We're all motivated to reduce the friction, whether it be amongst the owner operator and the vendor, but the ultimate impact on the resident, going in, we've gone in and assessed a floor and we're going to repair versus replace because they're up for renewal in 3 to 4 months. So we're not going to go in and rip out the whole new floor when we know there's going to be a CapEx expenditure in 3 to 4 months. So the asset is looked at differently, right? And so I agree with you. I think expectations are very, very clear, need to be very, very clear. What are we all working for? Like, what does success look like for all of us involved? And then uber communication, right? Like massive points of communication, not fluff, not communication not needed because no one has time for that, but like clear, concise communication around the things that impact the resident experience and the budget, right?
I totally agree. Yeah.
And
And I would say, on that transparency front too. I mean, I think it's really helpful for the company, the property management company, to give some insight to the vendor on where they are going strategically also. And kind of and how, and I approach managing teams this way too. Like I really want a team member to understand how their real world actions affect our big picture goals. I would say the same thing for a vendor, absolutely. And I would kind of liken it to taking a road trip where you're hiring a driver to drive you. And so, if you don't tell them where you're going, and instead, you're just giving them turn by turn directions from back seat. Yeah. You're never gonna get there, or you're gonna get, maybe exactly how to get there that one time that you went there, but like you end up going into a neighborhood where there's a bunch of road construction, right? And you don't know how to get around it. And so, it's like you have a destination that you want to go to as a passenger. You've got a driver though that you're saying like, no, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information at a time.
right.
And if you're not radically transparent and overly communicating, in that relationship, then the driver, and who in this case is the vendor partner that you work.
It's driving blind.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you may as well just say like drive around in circles, and we'll just spend some time with one another. But we're not going to get anywhere.
From an operator perspective, what do you think the best vendors consistently get right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that buy-in, well, not just the buy-in, but like a buy-in with kind of where the company partner is going, and an understanding of their systems too. And that's hard as a vendor, right? Because I mean, property management companies all have different tech stacks that they're working with, and different organizational structures that they're working among. But if you're really going to grow, like if you're a preferred floor and tile, and you're really going to grow a national relationship with a property management company, there's definitely some work on your end too, to have people in your back office that understand the systems and the processes of your client,
and the mindset of our
and the mindset of your client. Yeah. And the kind of what's their set of standards. You mentioned kind of repair or replace. What's that line in that market where they would say repair or replace?
With our estimators, it was so important because we would always hire experienced estimators because it was just a faster runway, right? And sure, you think just going out and measuring a floor is one thing, but it's not about measuring a floor. It's about really understanding, looking for people that could really assess a repair, and a good repair, not a Band-Aid, right? And so the repair versus replace mentality is what we wanted to do. But we used to have this saying, well, how I do it is. And a lot of our estimators were in the flooring industry for longer than I was ever in the flooring industry. And I'm like, no, we're not, they don't have the budget for it. And they're like, what do you mean they don't have the budget for it? That's the right way to fix it. I'm like, well, there is also another right way, not a wrong way, that can accomplish what we need to accomplish now because of where the asset is. And I think that mentality is kind of what you're talking about. Is like, you can't just be a flooring vendor. You've got to be a flooring vendor that understands that we're dealing with an asset here that is in different phases of its life cycle, whether it be at acquisition, whether it be at turn, whether it be at dispo. Those budgets look entirely different, and the motivation of the owner operator and what they're going to do with that portfolio is important. Like, we go out to a house, look at something and say, oh my gosh, this is a total demo. As we pick up the super and say, so what's the goal here?
Yeah.
Where are you at with the asset? Like, what do you want us to do? Here's your options. And I think if you're a really good vendor in the SFR BTR world, you provide options to the owner operator, right? Or the property manager, so that the property manager can go back to the owner and they can make the best decision they have with the information, fueled by some good photography, good photo or a description of like, if you do this, then this. And if you do that, here's what that is. Right. And just really getting in the trenches of that exact portfolio. And to your point, all those tiny micro decisions add up when you're looking at a portfolio of 80,000 homes and 30,000 homes under management at an IH, right? Like,
Yeah, and you're talking about, having an estimator too, and account executives that are managing that relationship, that know how to tell a story and know how to clearly communicate that story instead of just kind of sending numbers across
right.
across an email. And I think that in our business is kind of, that's where that's, I think, kind of the next step for a lot of people in their career in this industry, is realizing, yes, we have 80,000 homes, or we have 100,000 homes, or 110,000 homes. But especially in SFR, because you're not dealing with cookie cutter units like you are in multifamily. Not that multifamily is the over something, but that is literally 80,000, 90,000, 100,000 unique stories for that asset, and for that home, and where, to your point, it is in kind of the life cycle of that investment. And you need to be able to do more than say, like, well, look, our policy is, anything above $500, we're just going to replace instead of repair, or for, you think about like HVAC units, right? Like anything older than, 2008, we're going to repair. Well, you can get to a home, that, to your point, you're planning on dispoing that portfolio in 2 years. So you really want to put it in a new HVAC. You can get to a home where that 2008 HVAC unit has been maintained better than, the 99% of the units that you've ever seen, and it looks and runs absolutely brand new.
mm-hmm.
I have seen, though, crews and estimators go in and just look at the year and rip it out. Or I have seen same things for things like quartz countertops, right? Like, well, you've got granite in this house that looks fantastic. Well, yeah, but our spec is quartz. And so we're going to rip out great granite countertops so we can put in our quartz countertops. And that's a step that a lot of folks, they don't take in their work in this industry. A lot of vendors don't take it as well, and folks that are on the ground with vendors. And so that,
I think that's what we're seeing a big difference with now, is that we've slowed down because of current situations, and we're able to actually have these conversations and talk about it, because execution doesn't scale unless the people scale and learn from what we learned over the last decade. Also, in reference to Dustin Gump at Invitation Homes, back in the day it was $1,000 a day, right? That's what turn times were. We've been talking about, I was on the trade partnership committee through the National Rental Home Council with Dustin, and we were in a group together working on something, and he got really passionate, and he's like, stop saying $1,000 a day. It's definitely $1,000 a day. It's over. It's done. That's not what we're doing anymore. And he was like, he was very passionate about it, because, and I think that's what the audience has to understand, is like those concepts and those thought patterns are being looked at differently, and the incremental impact. So, right, I'm no longer with Preferred Floor and Town with Palisade Shower Systems. If you look at a portfolio of 120,000 homes, 110,000 homes, 50,000 homes, and you look at just how many showers were replaced last year, and I've asked questions to all top 5 at this point, because I've been with Palisade now for 9 months, and the data on that is hard to find and get to say, well, how many showers did you replace? And what did you go back with? So right now it's real easy to like demo reinstall a shower, go back with tile because that's what was in there. But now there's new innovation. There's new products and services, not just in shower systems, but in a lot of different things, whether it be plumbing fixtures. But to your point, like granite versus, well, our spec is this. So yeah, but this is still in great shape and this is a leasable home. It's not going to impact the bottom line much.
And that's where that understanding is where I think you move that relationship from vendor to partner.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had progress working on the turn and renovation side of the business. I think we had 400 or so vendors across our portfolio, nationwide that we were working with. Right. If we from our side had done a better job and the vendors from their side had done a better job, we probably could have done all that same work with a fraction of that, with 100 vendors, call it, across that space. But, not everybody's there yet, right? The people, processes, systems aren't all in the right place to work that efficiently. But that should be the goal, I think, is for us to build those relationships where it truly is a win-win, that our vendors are growing with our companies. Everybody is successful in kind of their same right, instead of always driving for the lowest cost or always driving for a certain KPI that you need to hit, this quarter so that you can hit a certain bonus level or something like that. And, really look at how the relationship builds and grows and scales long term. And if you do that, then you end up creating long-term value, not just for your assets or for your residents or for your own people in house, but you do it for your vendors as well. And your vendors build much larger businesses than they could have ever do it. And you are a key part of that.
I think we've turned that corner where a lot of the vendors are now, we're into like 3.0, right? So it's sure, speed, quality, communication. Those are the key things, right? And price. We've turned that corner. We're like, okay, yeah, everyone knows that. Now it's integration, not decrease communication, but like more efficient communication. So now we're diving deeper into, okay, price, and like what you said, you whack price down, price goes down, quality goes down, like the 3 pillars, and you're playing whack-a-mole. We were playing whack-a-mole. Now we're pulling levers and trying to find, just the right sweet spot. So, well, I'm going to hit you with, this is my favorite part of the episode, is where we hit the lightning round. And so I'm going to throw a few quick ones at you and you're going to answer quickly. So, it's like kind of like a game show here. So one thing you look for immediately in a new operation.
So, I mean, I think that, kind of an openness to new ideas and new ways, of doing things. We work in an industry, property management. I'm talking about the broader industry,
the bigger industry,
where a lot of folks can get really, kind of siloed and closed-minded in their thinking if they work in a one different sector and they spent their careers in that one different sector. This is one of the things I love about my career, is that I've spent time in all of them, and every size of company too. And I can confidently say, like 90% of what we do is the exact same across everything, because we all have the same outcome of providing a home for a resident and their family. And there are little nuances across those spaces. But I've interviewed with companies before where it really comes across that they they think that they have the secret sauce and there's no other way to succeed in what they do. And that's a real turnoff for me. And it's in if you've ever read the book of, what got you here won't get you there. Like,
Or who moved my cheese?
or who moved my cheese. Yeah. I've actually got who moved my cheese, like literally right there. On my bookshelf. But yeah. So just kind of that
Times actually, Stitch and Scurry. I can relate to both.
yeah. So just an openness to like, well, what do you think of this, or how have you experienced this, or what has been successful for you, instead of like, come join us and do this way because we've always done it this way. And that's something that I absolutely look at. And I think it's a real indicator on whether or not that relationship is going to succeed. And that's whether it's a new job for me, like I've got recently, or a new vendor partnership, or
it may be the difference between that business surviving today's day and age. I mean, everything is changing, and 90% of the population hates change. So one common operator blind spot.
Yeah, I think as companies grow and get bigger, I see too many of them ignoring their people still. And in this day and age where there's probably more data at hand that shows you, how negatively things like employee turnover and employee dissatisfaction affects your business. Yet I still see companies just kind of completely ignore that piece and think that the solution is, a new tech platform or automating something or something like that. And I hope that there's a day, and I hope that there's a day very soon where that would absolutely not be my answer to that question. But I think that it's still it. I will say a very property management specific answer to that question. I'll call this my answer 1B. Is that vacancy is your absolute biggest expense. 99% of properties. So everybody chases kind of certain metrics, rent growth and that kind of thing. But look, the longer a home sits empty, no matter what type of home it is, you're absolutely killing your returns. And that's whether you're a mom and pop landlord that has one or two rental properties, you're killing your returns there. Or if you're in Invitation Homes that has 110,000 homes that they manage. Yeah, but that is where most of your money goes out the window. And so I think that's a big blind spot as well.
Yes, and may I add something to that, Brandon?
100%, yeah.
I just moderated a panel in December at Scottsdale IMN, and I had 6 amazing women on that panel. Again, Reshma Block, Gentry, Hoyt, Jackie Petrolakis with Next Metro. I had Jennifer Merritt, and Marnie Vaughn, former IHer who is totally bleeds green and always will. And Carrie Sullivan with Amherst Group. So that's a solid group of women. And one of the biggest things that we walked away from that panel, and it was called Right Here, Right Now, Women in Leadership. And so it's not always about women, and by no means am I a feminist. But what I am is, and Reshma said it best, diversity is just good business. If your customer base is diverse, then we should be looking at our teams that are impacting decisions and leadership to also be diverse. It just is good business. So it's not a social issue. It's just a good business issue. And so I always like to add that when you talk about people, it's not only are we taking care of our people, but do we have the right dynamic of people within our organization? Would you have the right balance? Because balance, if we don't, take a look around, right? Like, make sure there's balance in every ring is what Reshma was talking about. And if it's not within your ring, and if you don't have diversity within that ring, you could really be missing the boat, especially when you look at your customer base and you realize they're diverse.
Yeah.
So how can you serve a diverse customer base if your leadership teams are not diverse?
That's great insight. I love that.
So one leadership habit you rely on.
So I would go back to what you said you liked about my LinkedIn comment earlier, and that's authenticity.
Yeah.
And I will say that's a quality that I came by, or I guess kind of bought into much later in my career. I mean, I as
Mhm.
an early and young people leader, like I was trying to play the role of people leader.
Yes.
Um, and you know, and it really took me, frankly, probably until progress to really kind of to come into that company and say, you know what, like I'm going to wear my heart on my sleeve as much as I reasonably can. You
Yeah.
can't always, as a people leader, give away everything, um, but I'm going to use this as a tool. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm going to use this as a tool, and I was so heartened by how much more quickly relationships deepened between myself and my team and some of my coworkers, whenever I started valuing that. And so much so that every company that I'm at in my career, I'm going to iterate in some way, and I'm going to kind of approach that new job in a little bit different way, using the lessons that I learned prior. And one of the lessons that I probably learned a little hard across my career is being inauthentic is just, it's not a recipe for success. And it ends up building on you as a person too, and as an individual, because it's like this heavy suit that you have to put on if you're playing a role that's not you every single day when you go and you get to work.
It's
And
so
yeah,
harder.
yeah, it's just an unnecessary stressor. And so yeah, so it would be authenticity for sure.
Well, so you are definitely in a new season compared to the last 12 to 18 months. I know seeking out full time employment over the last year is not easy. I want the audience and anyone listening that is still out there, looking for or in a current role and not in a situation that you necessarily like, or you're looking for change or something like that. You know, follow Brandon, because I think what he's defined as success for him is working. And I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to tell you, hey, this is what you need to do. But I think he has a lot of suggestions and can probably share with some authenticity some steps or tools or resources that maybe you could take out there. So I know there's still a lot of people out there. My heart goes out to a lot of people who are hurting right now, and I don't want to sugarcoat that really.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And I would say, if you've got questions or just need a sounding board, sometimes don't just follow me, message me. I'm happy to have kind of a virtual coffee with just about anybody that's going through that journey, and just needs a new set of ears to kind of to hear their story. And sometimes it's just listening to their story, other times it's answering questions, sometimes it's making the right connection. But I'm happy to do it all, because I know how hard that season can be, and how difficult it can feel while you're going through it.
And we're cultivating this at Everresi Media, truly the social fabric of the SFR BTR space.
Yes, it is.
It's our purpose. We are launching a new website, have an amazing careers page that is going to be great, celebrating the community. And that's what I love most, is the closeness and how we do come together to help each other out. So Brandon, thank you so much for sharing such a grounded perspective with significant experience, especially at a moment when you're actively stepping into a new leadership role. This was a rare look at how real owner operators evaluate performance, build trust with teams, and think about partners the right way. And a final thank you to our sponsor, Palisade Wall Panel and Shower Systems, helping operators across SFR and BTR portfolios with durable, efficient solutions built for scale. If you got value from this episode, please take a second and subscribe, like, and share. Comment for us. Say hello to Brandon and engage with him. And share this with someone in your network. It's the best way to help support the platform and keep these conversations coming. So thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Yovonne Kenny, and we'll see you next time on Inside the Vendor Network. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and coming to Instagram soon. Thanks again, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
It has been my pleasure.